Wright County Board of Adjustments for February 2nd, 2024. First order on the agenda are minutes to last month's meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review or look at the minutes? Any changes or corrections?
I'll make a motion to accept minutes as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Aaron, get us started.
All right, the first item on the agenda, we have the John Graber request. Could the applicant and anyone speaking on behalf of the request please step forward and speak your first and last name clearly into the microphone?
Good morning, Elizabeth Bentley.
Bernie Miller.
Lee Jorgensen.
All right, I'm gonna give a quick overview of this property. So, the request is to remove the existing dwelling and construct a new single-family dwelling that's located within the bluff. This item was continued from November 3rd, 2023 meeting so that a site inspection could be conducted on December 1st. The board also continued the request from the December 8th meeting to the February 2nd meeting so the applicant would have sufficient time to review plans and possibly make changes based on the discussion from that December 8th meeting. All right, so an updated site plan was submitted on January 31st. Variance is still required as the building setback from the top of bluff is 30 feet and the proposed home would be located within the bluff. This property at 0.66 acres. It's zoned urban rural transition and located on West Sylvia, which is a general development lake in Southside Township. The existing building coverage is 3% and the proposed will be 4%. The existing impervious surface coverage is 15% and the proposed will be, I believe, updated to 16.6%. Or 16.7. The township disapproves of the request within the bluff due to the square footage expansion into the bluff. There was mention at that original, or at least the only one we know of, township meeting with Supervisor Ferguson mentioning that perhaps they could pursue keeping the same footprint and building up. Neighbors submitted comments stating they support the request as they believe it's in a well-placed location. It will not hinder their views or impose on their property. That'll wrap up my overview. I do know one of the board members at the last meeting you guys were present at on December 8th did mention possibly going back to the township. If you guys have any additional township comment, feel free to submit it if you have a written copy or anything to me.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be it.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything wish to add to that?
Yes, I would. So it's nice to see you again. I'm Jack and Susan Graber's daughter. I've been here a few times before you and happy to be here again. And we appreciated the feedback that we received at the December board meeting and have come back with a revised plan that we hope satisfies at least a number of the concerns or some of the concerns that were raised and that, and yet still continues to serve our families' needs and hopes for continuing to enjoy this site. So we did go back to the township board, and sorry if there was something we should have done to let you know how that we went and met with them in early January and proposed this revised plan. We had a really productive conversation with them. Ultimately, however, they voted to deny the request, but not because they had any issue with what we were doing. And in fact, they really liked all the improvements on the property and generally had favorable things to say about this plan. But it was their view that even the minor move away from the original footprint was something that was kind of out of their purview, or they believe with the precedent-setting issue of being in the bluff that it was something that the county board should be the ones to decide whether to approve this request. So they're really mindful of the precedent-setting issue and thought that this board was the one who would be better situated to see whether this was something that they should be setting precedent for or not. But we spent a lot of time with them and had really productive conversations. I can go into that more, and I do have a copy of the minutes from that meeting that I'd printed out myself, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, when you're done or now, if you want to hand it over to me, I'll take a copy of that.
I might just keep it in case I want to reference it. So I'll give it to you.
perfectly
Okay. So just as a quick refresher, I think, and Mr. Ogle gave this quick overview, but especially for our new board member, Mr. Greninger, I hope I'm saying that right. We're not able to be at the site visit or kind of see these prior conversations, but this is a site my family has owned for a long time. There's a cabin built in the 1940s that's not functional anymore. A lot of issues with the site, including an old cesspool, an outhouse that has needs to be taken out and excavated. The well needs replacement. We're planning to put a new sewage drain fill in. So we have a lot of improvements we're hoping to do on the property to make it something that we can continue to enjoy. So as for those of you here at the last meeting may recall, we did receive some favorable feedback about what we were doing with the site and all the site improvement plans, and discussed some possible modifications that could alleviate concern of expanding so much into the bluff. So Board Member Mole, I think, had suggested that we maybe could try and stay largely within the footprint, but possibly extend slightly to kind of square it out or look at the cantilever. That would have been closer to around 825 square feet. For what we're proposing now is a foundation that is still 700 square feet. So it's the same rough size as the current foundation, with some minor changes that it's squared off. It's slightly rotated to correct kind of an original error when the house was built, which is that it was built at an angle that kind of faces more towards one of the other properties rather than straight up facing the lake. So we kind of wanted to resituate it. And we moved it slightly north, and further with the idea of kind of preserving the bluff, that it ends up saving a couple of more trees to the south, so than our original plan. Ultimately, what this does is it basically cuts the basement that we had proposed in the last one about in half. So we're kind of sacrificing that living space that we might have had with the idea of preserving that bluff and keeping the first floor about the same, but with now it's supported by two piers that you see kind of on the south end to the left of the photo here. And ultimately, we also, I guess, we reduced the size of that first floor by about 25 square feet so as to save two of the trees that are abut the side. So our hope is here that with the concern, and we understand and appreciate the issue of building on the bluff and making sure to preserve the bluff, that this saves a lot of that space, the natural space kind of running under. We like this idea too of wanting to be really mindful of protecting the land and the lake, while also trying to achieve as much as we can so that we can enjoy the property as full as we can. So I might just pause there, see if you have any questions, or we can talk about kind of the other broad improvements we plan to make to the property, including stormwater runoff, permeable driveways, saving the other trees, putting in a drain field, sewage drain field that Bernie can certainly add some perspective to, but I guess I'll leave it there.
When the conversations go with the board, we'll certainly have some questions for you then. So, but if you want to just continue, that'd be great.
Okay, great. So as I mentioned, some, I think, major benefits to this based on what we had talked about last time is almost, very little disruption of new soil. So one thing we had talked about last time was moving the property and then having to build new excavation site completely. This uses about just under 500 square feet of the original foundation site. So we're talking about a couple hundred square feet difference to kind of do the squaring and correct for those old errors. We're saving trees that we, in our prior plan would have had to take down. And then as far as the improvements to the property, and a couple of things maybe even before I get to that, something to keep in mind is that there are no other variances required for this outside of the bluff variance in order to build this. We're more than 75 feet back from the lake. In fact, we've moved it back a couple of feet since we were before you last time. So we're over that 75-foot setback from the neighboring, both of the neighboring lots. And the total impervious here is 11.4%, whereas it would have been 25% allowed. And if you recall, those of you who have been out on the property, this is a place that the slope is just less than 18% grade. So it's a kind of we're not building or talking about the most abrupt part of the bluff, but back in a space that's much more of a slope. So beyond that, we are planning to improve the property on a number of fronts, and this is what I was kind of mentioning quickly earlier. We have plans for enhanced stormwater drainage, which include landscaping and taking advantage of the natural drainage patterns. And certainly with the area that we're no longer going to excavate would have no effect on the change of that runoff. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have about that. We plan to establish a permeable driveway. We'd remove and excavate the old outhouse and pit on the property, collapse an existing cesspool, which currently sits in front of where the house is currently located, kind of to the southeast corner of where our proposed building is. We plan to create a new 706 square foot pressurized drain field and abandon the old holding tank there, which also, I think, and you can tell me if I'm getting this right, but a 1,500 gallon compartment septic tank, 1,000 gallon pump tank. We plan to abandon and cap an old well and place a new well that is more than 100 feet from any of the adjacent property wells. And we have plans to build the home with very high level energy efficiency, higher than recommended insulation, roof and side walls, so that we can try and be as respectful of the environment as we can. We have no plans to build a garage on the site or any other buildings on the site. And again, as we discussed last time, by allowing us to continue to build in this space as opposed to moving it back or around to other parts of the property, we're preserving as many of the old oak trees as we possibly can. And as I mentioned, in this particular plan, we've even added to the trees that we're saving by making these modifications. So with that, I welcome questions from the board.
Okay. What we'll do, Barry, we'll take further comment. I think you might want to have some more comment.
Great.
And then what we'll do afterwards, is we'll open it up to the public, and then we'll have the discussion. Okay. Thank you.
I don't have a lot to say. I think
Okay.
she covered most of it. I mean, we've worked together. I know we've, I wasn't able to be at the township meeting, but did see the minutes of that. And, I think that part of the bluffs are a hot topic right now, and again, when this started, the survey didn't indicate a bluff. I mean, they thought they were coming in for permits and needing no variances. The intent was to design around it. I mean, either way, it is what it is. So, just trying to really, best fit this house or something in there. And, most of you were out there, and it is, the disturbance, the minimal disturbance around the exterior of the footprint. When you're gonna take out this house, you're gonna have to over excavate a little bit anyways to get down to the basement. So this is basically in that same footprint you would need to do. And the part on the piers, I think, is a good idea. It's not very impactful to the ground. It could depend on what happens to that space underneath there, but it does preserve the natural, the slope that's currently there now. So, and that's about all I have.
Thank you, Bernie.
Can I just add, for the record, because I have the minutes here, and I'll make sure to get these to you, but Chairman Ferguson, this was towards the end of our conversation when we were, of the township board, towards the end of our meeting, stated, this is what, from the minutes, he stated that the board, which was reference to this board, has recommended going into existing footprints when building in bluffs. And they, meaning the township board, feel they would be setting a precedent if they allowed this change. He likes the many improvements to the lot, including the new septic and well, removal of existing non-conforming sewage system and outhouse, but can't support the structure that is off the original site of the existing home. So that reflected our understanding, which was that really anything off of that footprint would need to be decided by the board.
Yeah.
Thank you. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Lee?
I think you both covered it, so.
Lee is our good family friend who's been helping us with the design of the home, so I think will be helpful in question and answer if something comes up.
Perfect.
Well, thank you. What I'll do then, if there's no further comment, I'll just open it up to the public. Is there anyone in the public that has any questions or concerns or wishes to express anything for the project? Seeing none, what we're going to do is we'll close the public comment. We'll take the conversation up here to the board. And Dan, could you get us started?
Yeah. I guess I want to thank you for working on it and working together with us and taking in our comments and stuff. And looking at what the original was, it looks like the house has moved. You're at 17 feet from the property line, and the original, you were at 20. So that's what you're talking about when you moved a little bit over and squared things up. in doing that, I agree with Bernie's statement as, excavating the house, you're gonna go 2-3 feet over the edges by the time you take out the basement and doing all that kind of stuff. And with the piers and building it up over there and not going into the bluff or the hill, you're preserving some of that. I mean, some of the improvements you made here with the sewer and with the home design, I think you've listened to us and have done the best you can. We're still sitting with a house in a bluff, an existing bluff. It's going to take some disturbance no matter what we do. And by putting pillars into it and I don't think we're setting a huge precedence on this one because of the uniqueness of the property and being out there and walking on the property. And by moving it over, I had concerns with that because of the couple of the big oak trees that were there. I know all trees die and all trees can be replaced. But if the way the property is existing now, by moving it and trying to preserve that, you're trying to preserve the state of the lake and the appearances too. I still have concerns of expansion into a bluff. I mean, that word expansion into a bluff is something that is always going to be a challenge for me. But by putting in a new sewer, a new drain field in the back, I mean, we've got a lot of improvements and we've got minimal disturbance in the bluff itself. So I guess I'll go with what the rest of the constituents have to say.
Thank you, Dan. Dan?
Yeah, thank you. I think you did answer a lot, like Dan said. I understand the bluff, but when we were out there, it looked fairly like it was not a bluff right there. It flattened out, and I think square foot with the deck, we asked you to incorporate that into your total square foot, and I think you did with doing posts like that. That was very good. You mentioned that you had some drain fields or stormwater management would be one thing I'd be still interested in, even though your parents live next to you. Put something through there, like a rock bed or something, just for the water to run down without washing any silt into the lake. Then I think I would be pretty good with it.
We plan to do that, and we heard that feedback and really appreciate it. And that's part of our plan with the landscaping, to put some bigger rocks or something just to keep it.
Sure. Keep the silt from going in the lake. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Dan. Russ?
I haven't been out to the property to see it, but what you guys tried to, or fixed it, I think is all right. I don't have a lot of questions because I really don't know the properties. So it's fine. It looks, you did a good job, I think.
Thank you, Russ. Bob?
You know that I did not like the first plan at all. I don't like this one any better. I still think you need to move out of the bluff line, move back. You have almost 3/4 of an acre there, so you have room to move back. You talk about minimum disturbance, and I look at this plan, I see you got nothing but disturbance, because in front, between you and between the house and the lake, you're gonna dig a hole for a 1,500 gallon tank, of one tank, 1,000 gallons in another tank. You're gonna have that whole area in between the front of the house and where it really goes steep. You're gonna have that all tore up. So you're gonna have, so that when you talk about minimum disturbance, and then you're gonna dig a sewer line from your pump tank all the way up that hill, all the way back to that pressurized tank, or to the pressurized the bed there for the septic. So you're gonna be digging a trench all the way up that hill. I still think you should move back. Trees can be removed and replanted. I don't like this plan at all. You're gonna be digging a new trench in for a new well coming down the hill. There's just a lot of things here that, when you say minimum disturbance, there's disturbance written all over this plan. You move back up the hill, maybe you can put your septic tank someplace else then, or you could put the septic tanks where the original house is now, being that you're gonna have that tore up anyhow. No, I'm a no on this plan. This is a bad plan.
Thank you, Bob. I have a slightly different view. I think if we were to build inside, you bring up some really valid points, Bob, that I didn't think of, but if we were to build within the exact footprint, we'd still be digging up probably a new tank anyway. So I think in that report, some of that I didn't think of, but that would be disturbed anyway. But I think there's a lot of thought put into the design of the building and to ensure that minimal amount of excavation is done other than for the septic system. I think a lot of thought's been made into it. Minimal amount of disruption of new soil as far as the construction of the home. Our impervious coverage has gone up just a hair, not much. And I think the expansion it's reasonable. And when I look at the neighborhood, I look at it fitting in with the rest of the neighborhood. It's nothing extreme. I mean, we've seen many times people want to build these huge mammoth buildings. This is rather modest. It fits in well. But as Bob said, there is some disturbance there, and I would suggest you take some serious precaution during construction to address that. Overall, though, I can see you've put a lot of thought and effort into the plan to make it better, and I appreciate that. So I can go along with the variance request. So
Mr. Chair?
yes.
Aaron, question for you. On this plan, if they were to come back and just replace as existing, the sewer and the tanks out in the front, if they were to add a new sewer system, would that take any variances or any permitting or anything like that? I mean, if you're going to replace your existing home as is, for whatever size, you're still gonna need tanks and septic system. Will that take any variance or anything from this board?
No, I mean, as of right now, if they did an exact replacement, we would, depending on what their septic's like currently, right? If they need a new septic, I mean, they would need a new septic for a new home. We have new homes, even if it's an exact replacement, at all costs should be put on a new system, or at least, a functioning septic system rather than like on a holding tank. We could avoid variances if they did the exact same size, exact same location, essentially following the statute for replacement of nonconformities in the shoreline district.
So where they're placing this system right now in front of the house, would it need any variances? I mean,
Well, right now, I mean, I'm looking at, and
mean,
we could
for
ask
setbacks.
Bernie for classification or correction, but I mean, it shows 10 feet from the property line for their absorption area, 10 feet from, up here. The tanks, judging by this, they're going to be the same. This was the one that's abandoned. One down here, I mean, Scott, our septic guy, looks over these briefly before we take them to the board in front of you guys, and I didn't see anything come up or hear anything. Bernie, would you like to make any notations?
Sure, I'll add to that. So septic tanks, and drain fields, we put many drain fields in the bluffs. We put tanks in the bluffs. I mean, it's something you excavate a hole, you put it back. I mean, the dirt generally goes back the way it was. It's kind of a temporary thing, not necessarily a long-term disruption. So, I mean, that's never been an issue before, and we've done that on many different levels. And, I wish there was, another way to do this, because first off, we thought, well, maybe if we could figure out where to put the well and then be able to, and not compromise the neighboring properties on either side. I mean, the well's sitting right in the middle. And so if we move the well over to one property line or something, that's going to could potentially affect the neighbor's future drain fields or setbacks. So it becomes kind of tricky. So it really is a place. If we put the tank anywhere else, it will have to be a lot deeper. These tanks are down at the elevation of the basement, so that it won't be like a 12-foot deep excavation. It'll be a shallow excavation. It makes the most sense. They certainly could bore the line, depending who puts in the septic. A lot of contractors would just bore that line up there, and possibly if they're out there boring, they might bore in a well line, so they don't actually have to dig up that, and I think there's a couple things. There's, first off, I would say with the bluff, when you dig into the concern of a bluff with the DNR, they're concerned about the hydraulic loading of the soil and getting all that water And then, it has a tendency, seen it happen on Maple Lake in the clay, where it's so saturated, then the steeper it gets, it can't maintain its structure of the soil. It just all wants to move down the hill and sloughs down into the lake, right? So now we have a situation here where the flattest part of this whole lot is where the tanks are right now, basically. So that is a flat spot right there, where this area is almost not a bluff. If it was another, I think if it was like another 5 feet, we could get, we got to get 50 feet under 18%. Well, if we got like 45, and you got some areas that might make it, some areas it won't. It's right on that edge of a bluff, and it is in a flatter spot. And the soils that are on Lake Sylvia, like we had on Lake John before and other ones, there's houses built on the bluffs all over the place. They've been there from 40s, 50s, whatever. There isn't water in that soil. It doesn't get that hydraulic loading because the water goes straight through that sand. So I think that's the primary concern of a bluff. It encapsulates a lot of areas. There's some area, the steeper the bluff and the heavier the soils, and the more disruption, the more risk. In this case, we have, we're on the edge of that, being a bluff or being exempt from a bluff, this portion. We have, conditions that are not a big concern for, the whole thing just sliding into the lake. So I think it's, the way the tanks are set up, there may be ways there might be another way to do that if that's a sticking point.
No, I guess it's not, for me, I'm questioning if the house was, replaced on footing, no permits are needed, no variances were needed. You're going to need a sewer system. Would that be the ideal to place it, even if you were replacing the house with, and that's why I'm asking, there's no variances for it, so you wouldn't be in here asking for a variance for the sewer. You would replace the house, on its footings, do all you're gonna do, and you're still in the same situation. You're going to be disturbing that area. You're going to be digging out the house. You have to put in a new sewer system, and that would be the ideal place you would probably put it because you wouldn't need a variance. Am I correct or am I not correct?
Correct, very correct. And anywhere else we go, there's stuffed trees in the way. This area has already been disturbed from that lower retaining wall back to the house. It's already been disturbed. There's not trees in there. I mean, that is like it's an optimum spot. It's, meets the lake setback, meets all the setbacks. There's no concern of it being in a bluff. So if you were to replace that house right where it was, you would put the tank, that would probably be the best option of where to put the tanks.
Okay. And then if, I'm hearing Bob's very loud and clear. If you're to move the house back and get it out of the bluff and get into the setbacks, you're still gonna be having the sewer probably in front of the house. And when we were out there, it drops off back towards the road. What is that, for that area that it can be built in, how much is that going to affect where you can put your drain field in a house, in a well, and still not, I commend you for trying to put the well in the center so you're not affecting neighbors in the future for that. I'm trying to get to that practical difficulty or that reason for it. And I know we're expanding into a bluff, and I understand what you're trying to do there too. But I guess I'm just trying to get an understanding of what we're doing and the need.
Mr. Chair, if I may. I think too, I agree with Bob on a lot of those statements. It's just once you remove that house, you've got to fill in all that dirt, so now you're creating two spots. So that's kind of why I'm tending to go with that stretch, because you still got to backfill all that dirt, and now you're disturbing more soils. And I thought that was a nice flat spot right where you're talking to do it. So I don't think there's any severe harm to the lake doing it right there. So I just wanted to point that out, but otherwise I agree with you on a normal situation, but this, I don't think it's setting a precedence. It would be a hardship too to push them way back, they'd lose their sites, a potential hardship. of the lake.
Mr. Chair, one other comment of mine is this: the further you move back, the further up you have the hill, so you don't have water coming at your house, coming down, because the higher up the hill you get, the less water you have coming at your place. And then also, if they would want to have a garage or something, whether now or in the future, you would want that to be at the top or the apex of your hill, not halfway down it too. So that's why I think this plan needs to be revised.
Just speaking out, I don't think they'd ever attempt to put an attached garage or maybe a detached way up on the hill. But from looking at that site, I don't think there'd ever be a attached garage, and I don't think we'd allow it if you came back and get it.
Excuse me, yeah. No, we really have no intent to build a garage. We've never had a garage on this property. And we typically park our, cars outside when we're at the lake. It's not something that we prefer, that natural landscape. And this also isn't a house that we see ourselves anytime in the foreseeable future selling to somebody else who might want to build this garage. I mean, the whole purpose of doing the property in this way is so that I can use it with I have 3 little kids. My sisters have 2 kids. We come out, we, love this space, and that my parents can spend a long time on this property as they continue to age. And, I think just as a really quick comment about the precedent point, which I absolutely appreciate, and I know that this board has faced a lot of these tough questions lately. To me, this is a property that I hope you could point to as a good precedent, to say this is the circumstance when a variance is appropriate. These are really modest requirements. We've done a lot to try and balance all of these different issues on one spot. We're making improvements that have short-term disruption of the soil, but to get rid of an old cesspool that's never been taken care of. I mean, that's actually over time improvement to that property, even if it requires some disruption in the moment. So the long-term care, this is what I would hope you could point to and say, would be an appropriate request for a variance, as opposed to other, spots on the lake that are kind of trying to build these big mansions or trying to build space. So I appreciate that consideration, and that would be my hope.
Thank you for your comments. With that said, can I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve it as drawn, Exhibit A as drawn, with the following conditions of a stormwater management submitted by time of building permit, site plan noted, and a building plan noted.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second it? Any
Okay, we would
discussion?
just clarify that the site plan noted Exhibit A, we would note the building plans Exhibit B, and then being that it's a new septic plan too, you guys might want to include the septic plan noted as Exhibit C.
So moved.
So noted.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Aye.
Aye. So noted. Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time on this matter.
You guys ready? Okay. All right, next item on the agenda, we have the Belinda Bergen request. Let's see here. So this request is to construct an addition to the existing home that would not further encroach any setback. As the existing home is 2.3 feet from the north side yard and 5.5 feet from the south side yard. That request was continued from the January 5th meeting because the property owner and builder asked the board if they would approve of changes to the original plan and location that were originally noted. The updated request is now to construct in addition to the existing home that would not, once again, further encroach any setback. The new footprint would be 7 feet from the north side yard and 2.6 feet from the south side yard. Variance is still needed because the existing home would be located within those setbacks, both from the side yard, which is 15 feet. The property is 0.44 acres and located in Southside Township, and it's zoned urban rural transition on West Lake Sylvia, which is classified as general development. The existing impervious surface coverage is 27.3%, with the newly updated proposal to reduce the impervious surface down to 24.9%. With that said, there's still an unpermitted storage building that was constructed sometime between 2021 and 2023 within the north side yard setback that further exceeded that 25% impervious surface maximum. Even if this request were not to be approved, the reference shed would still be in violation. The township approves of this request as the addition would be an improvement over the existing house side setbacks, and impervious coverage would be at 23.1%, because this is their original ask when you guys spoke with the township. And two of the neighbors that did comment, they had no issues with the request. So unless you guys have any updated information, if you guys did go back to the township or anything like that, that'll wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. For the record, could you each state your name?
Sure. My name's Belinda Berggren, and this is where I live. I'm the owner.
Thank you.
Bernie Miller.
Allie Vivold.
Thank you. Just kind of one of those things we got to do. Do you have anything you wish to add to what was been said?
No, I mean, I just want to, well, thank you for seeing us again. And I just want to, add that, really the main purpose of what I'm trying to do is just, it's more than anything, just a safety issue for me to be able to access my house, while I'm inside and not have to go through the outside. And, the major change from the last time we were here was just shifting things over, still being below the 25% impervious. We'll be removing the shed and just making changes just to try to, be in line with, with what, you'd like to see. So, I think that's it. They might have some questions.
I'll note on that, the last time we talked about it, we were talking about the construction of the building, right? The first plan was straight with the other building. Working with Litfin Trust, we were able to figure out a truss system to then, this now addition would be straight with the property lines, or straight with that left garage, straight with the property lines versus out of that angle. So we were able to work with Litfin Trust and to figure out the truss layout to do a tie-in that would then get us back straight. So we were able to get that done.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll add a couple things here. I think that really challenging. I think me and Al spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out how to do this because it's hard to see how the angle of that garage addition, is considerably off of the house. And once you start expanding that, it gets goofy. Of course, you'd like to square up to the house, but the house isn't very square, so it's probably built prior to having a survey or something, so who knows? But I think we have something here. I think one thing to take from this is, the existing impervious, is over. We can get this down to under 25 now. And then also the building coverage is, we're, currently you could be at 15% and we're going, down to 13, what I think the proposed plan is 13.2%. So decrease in the building, part of that is a storage shed. And changing the driveway to get a lot of the impervious down, but this kind of condenses it. It's considerably a ways off the lake. You obviously know there's a road between there and the lake, and so yeah, that's where we're at.
Thank you, Bernie. If there's nothing else to add, I'll open it up to the public. Is there any comments or concerns from the public? If there is, step forward. Seeing none, we'll close this and bring it up to the board. And Dan?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did the footprint include, or increase, because I know we were talking, you were gonna have to either increase or shrink one wall to get it to square.
In essence, very minimal. To create
Increased.
that increased by to create that angle like you're
Yeah.
referencing to, but that's it. We didn't grow.
I just wanted to draw that to everyone else's attention, because I noticed it was 20 foot, and now it's 24.
Yep. On that right side.
Yep.
Yep, exactly. That's to get that side back out to go straight.
Okay,
That's it.
so that, but we still do fall underneath,
Yep. We still fall
Impervious.
underneath impervious, yep, for the building coverage, yep.
okay. And then you got proposed to move the LP tank, and I wanted to say, I feel for your loss there, I forgot the last meeting,
Thank you.
didn't say nothing. But,
Yep, we got that propane tank moved out, so we're gonna move that out so we meet the 10-foot setback from the building.
okay. I guess those were my main concerns. I'd like to kept it smaller, but I guess if it's underneath the building amount, I'm okay with it then. See what the rest of the board has to say.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Russ?
I have no questions.
Thank you, Russ. Bob?
You know, the setback, or the variance is because of where their house is that it's so close to the deal. The addition, being at 2.6 at the closest there, you know, it's closer than what we would like, but being that the other part of the house is already there, I really don't see a problem with this. Township approves of it, and you know, you've been living there some time with these setbacks too, so you're aware of how tight that really is. So I guess I can approve this proposal.
Thank you, Bob. Dan?
I guess one of the questions, I mean, you're going to be removing that existing shed. What type of a timeline do you need for that? From,
I would say we need to finish the addition so then we can take that material to put inside.
Right.
That would be, so at time of CO,
and that would be 6 months?
from, if we got, I don't know, we could start digging next week if you want. But,
That's true.
yeah, by September 1,
Okay.
you know?
I mean, I know this board is gonna wanna put a time date on it, because
Yeah.
if we don't, then.
I would want
3 years
enough
later.
time to get the building completed, the material put in, hauled out, grading done, grass planted before freeze up, right? So that's where I'd put September 1 at the latest date.
Right, yeah, and as far as the setbacks in the building, the existing house, like Bud made a point of, you know, it's existing, we're not getting any closer, we're running along the same edge. And on that side, we're only extending out another 9 feet, so I'm okay with the presenting and, you know, making sure that the existing shed is removed on a timely matter.
I've got a couple questions just quickly. So, did you by chance get or bring the building plans for option 1?
Yep.
Okay, so I just wanted clarification. So right now, right, the current garage, it's this right here, right? Kind of one level. The updated one, is that going to be 2 levels, right? It's going to be main floor, and then it's going to be part of that garage, right?
Yep.
So it would be, so we're extending out and we're going up a level with it, right? So I don't have those plans. Could we just put them up on the screen really quick? Yep. I'll just put them on the document camera just so everyone can see, because it's the update. It'll be right where Bernie's at.
You could do that fancy stuff. Oh, look at that.
So we had the ones from last meeting, which were obviously the slightly different plan. This right here is just gonna reflect what their new plan, or location is. So, just so you guys are aware.
Thank
Same
you.
thing, but now,
Okay,
yeah.
And then when you're done, I'll like a copy of that too.
Yep, this
Perfect.
is yours.
Awesome.
Good?
Thank you, Aaron. Likewise, you've done what we've asked, and you're here before us. We appreciate it, so I have no issues with the request. With that said, can I entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to construct an addition to the existing home. Addition will not further encroach on any setback. The new footprint area of the addition will be 7 feet from the north side yard and 2.6 feet from the south side yard. The building, the existing shed, the unpermitted shed will be removed prior to September 1. And impervious cannot exceed the 25%. Otherwise, building plans, number, letter A, I guess.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify a couple things quick. So the unpermitted detached building removed, they said prior to September 1st, so that'd be of this year? 2024? Okay. As well, so site plan noted Exhibit A, building plan Exhibit B. You did mention the impervious dropped down to 25%. I guess our office would just recommend that as-built survey is done prior to the actual building permit final to verify that it's actually been brought down to compliance prior to us just saying, well, here you go, now we're closed out on the permit. So that's something that could be added.
All right, so moved.
So we have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second it. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
I think I can take a break for a little bit.
So this one last, I'll keep you last. No, actually, no, you were here yesterday. I was here last time. You were here, but I'll keep you last.
All right, next item on the agenda, we have the Lynn burning request. Could the applicant and anyone speaking on behalf please state your first and last name?
Lynn Burning.
Sherry Burning, his wife.
Dylan Howard, builder.
All right, so this request is to construct a new home, or the original request, I guess I should say, was to construct it 72.5 feet from the ordinary high water line of the lake. And that was continued from the January 5th meeting to allow the applicant sufficient time to review their plans and possibly make changes based on the discussion from the January 5th meeting. An updated plan was submitted on February 1st, showing the home would be 80 feet from the ordinary high water of the lake. Variance is still required for the proposed updated plan, as the proposed new home would be 80 feet from the ordinary high water of a recreational development lake where 100 feet is required. The 1.79 acre property in Silver Creek Township is zoned urban rural transition and located on Limestone Lake, which we talked about is classified as recreational development. The township approves the request because the dwelling is being moved further from the lake and it fits within the scope of the character of the other lots on each side of the house. That will wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicants have anything wish to add?
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Thank you, members of the board. So I wanted to state, so our goal with our house building project is to build a house slab on grade. Our plan is, to have a place that we can retire in place. And so to achieve slab on grade, the topography is somewhat working against us here. The lot comes up, flattens out, and then slopes away. So I did a picture here of kind of what that looks like. So as we move the house out to 100 feet, we've got kind of this drainage area, so we're starting to move out in towards that. So we're asking to do 80 feet to help us maintain, the drainage. We're looking at adding a retaining wall there too to also help maintain the current drainage ditch. The other aspect of moving back to 100 feet is we are somewhat impeded by the cabin to the south with the at 100 feet, and moving to 80 feet improves that. So our, and our placement, we've looked at our neighbors, we're not impeding the neighbor's view. We're back behind, their line of sight essentially of the neighbor to the north and the neighbor to the south. So that's our request and our reasoning.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to add any further comments to that at all?
Well, I guess I will. So what I had my surveyor do on here, just to kind of give you, because you guys haven't made a site visit, but kind of a clear picture here on paper. And I know we don't do the string test here or anything, but I did have them kind of draw a line between the neighbor to the north and the neighbor to the south to give you perspective of where this is sitting on the project or on the property. When Lynn and Sherry came to us originally to start a design,
Hey, I'd
was
hate
all
to
fun.
interrupt really quick. Could you just either angle the microphone your way a little bit or speak in that? We're just trying to get it picked up for the
Oh, sure.
recording.
Is that better?
Thank you.
Okay. So Lynn did a nice job sort of depicting where that slope shows on that side cut, which is hard to do on a piece of paper like this, but you guys see these all the time. My first site visit on the property after we talked about wanting to build an accessible home, a slab on grade, so they can age in place. And I made a site visit out here to meet them, and I had concerns of this area between, like Lynn's drawing showed there, where drainage wants to come through. It's not a drainage ditch, but it definitely looks like an area that you could tell by the debris and the soils where the grass was dead that water sits there in the springtime. It's not a wetland. It's not even a type 1, but it gets wet. It holds water when we get I'm assuming large rains or snow melts and things. So I'd hate to put our house there. So between those reasons for drainage, line of sight, feel as though I appreciate what you guys do, not wanting to set precedents. 100 feet, could it go back 100 feet? The practical difficulties here, I think, to age in place, the hill sloping the wrong way, and the sight lines, and primarily that drainage issue, I think is a practical difficulty. So that's why we kind of looked at moving it back to 80 versus the 100, or versus what we're at before, 72.5. Yes. We thought was a nice compromise.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Any further comments?
One family thing, like I talked about aging in place. I'm retiring from the Mayo Clinic. I'm currently a registered nurse there. And one of the reasons we also are moving here is to take care of my parents. And my mother had a stroke about 14 years ago, and her mobility is very limited. As we start raising this house up, she will not be able to come to the house. That will be a difficulty for her. So it's not our immediate family, but my mother and father too. So they're in their late 80s. So thank you.
Great, thank you. With no further comment, I'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to comment or express concerns? Seeing none, then I'll close it, public comment, and we'll take it up for discussion. And Bob, could you get us started?
All right. My main opposition is that regardless of whatever you do, if this approved, you will need a variance. If you just want to add something small, a deck, anything to that house, you're going to need a variance at 80 feet. You move back to 100, you don't, because you're behind the setback. There's no bluff. You have almost 1.8 acres. You have room. You can do wonderful things with landscaping to change the elevation. As the builder said, there's not a wetland in issue here. So fill. You can reshape the lot to fit. So I think a lot of your difficulties, your practical difficulties, can be alleviated because of landscaping. I think on a brand new construction, you really kind of want to look at. I always have trouble on brand new construction, being that you need a variance, especially when you have room. When you have these quarter-acre lots that we see sometimes, or a third of an acre lots, they don't have the room, the luxury of the room that you have. That's just the way the land is, and I think that's where my vote will be too.
Thank you, Bob. Dan?
I guess my question for the contractor would be, in looking at the view and the side views and stuff, we're looking at about a 4-foot little rise there. Mm-hmm. How much would it take, and we're not dealing with a bluff or anything like that, or maybe Aaron can answer too, but how much would it take to take that off? And I know you're gonna leave a little bit of a slope into the neighbor's properties, because you're gonna lower yourself down, but if you took some of that hill off and move it back into that lower part, we've all have established it's not a wetlands, it's not anything like that, so we can put dirt in there. Can we take that hill off or that rise so we can keep the house flat, so we can get mom into it? And put that 4 feet in front of the house that we're trying to stay, level with, put that into the back. And granted, I know it's gonna give you a little bit of a slope on the sides of your property. It's gonna give you a ditch or a bank or however you wanna say it. Because we've given variances 70, 80 feet before, but along with what Bob is coming across with, we're going new. It's hard to give a variance because every time you wanna, and you'll say today, we don't wanna put a deck on, or we don't wanna put an addition on. But either you or the next person will have to come in here and go through, because we want to put an addition onto our deck, or we want to add a bathroom onto the side. And you're going to have a variance. You're going to have to pay the $450, $500, $600 again just to do that. Where if we can get you back to 100 feet, maybe take that ridge off some, so you have what you're asking for, so you have a flat surface. I'm just trying to find ways that we can help you and not have to have variances.
Well, I might have to defer to Aaron on part of that question of how much of that, how much can I cut there and how close can we get? If you let me start getting into these tighter numbers up by the lake and we can scrape those off, that becomes, yes, practically take a big piece of steel, we can push a lot of dirt around. A couple more trees come out. Yes, can we do that? I don't know the legalities of that. And the other piece is the displacement of water in that area. Like I said, it looks like it pools there probably in spring snowmelt when you have frozen ground. And so, not so much this year, but last year would be a good example. If that ground was frozen before we received all that snow last year, I'm assuming, and by the looks of it, that area pools water and gets wet there. So, so that's my concern, is that displacement of that for that area. Where are we going to put that now? Because it goes back up towards the road. It's coming from the property to the north and flows over, sits there, and maybe pools over to the property to the south. So that's that piece of it, but.
Yeah, so I'm not a land alteration kind of specialist or expert in our office, but I did pull up, you guys should be able to see on the screens, here's the land alteration application. So it really depends on a couple things. It's going to be, where is this material coming from? How close to the lake in this case? There's not a bluff to worry about. And then it's also going to be coming down to, well, how much material is it going to be? Because if you look on the screen, right, if you're outside of shoreline, right, we're calling outside of shoreline, in this case, outside of 100 feet. That's your shoreline building setback. So if you're going 0 to 500 cubic yards of material being altered, now this doesn't talk about, you still have to do proper erosion control, all that kind of stuff. But there's, a point where, okay, we don't really have a whole lot maybe needed. Now, okay, are you within shoreland? If you're within shoreland, now you're looking at, right, talks about 0 to 50, outside of the shoreline impact zone, which is going to be half, which is 50 feet. So pretty much from 50 to 100, 0 to 50 cubic yards it's again, really no permit. You skip the administrative side, you jump all the way up to anything over 50 then requires a conditional use permit, which is a public hearing. If it's just, hey, we're going to have a little bit of fill brought in the site to level off our home, typically that gets roped into the building permit. I'm not concerned about that. It's going to be altering, filling, grading, et cetera, other areas of your property to then kind of rearrange it somewhere else on your property. So I'm not going to guarantee what route you'd have to go, but if you follow these guidelines here, that should be able to let you know if it's a no permit, an administrative permit, or a conditional use permit.
And I guess, Aaron, on some of the existing houses that are out there, and I don't know if you can answer this now, on some of the existing houses out there, do they have variances? Because I know that's not a total newer area, but some of those houses are newer out there. I mean, have we issued variances for any of the neighbors for lake setbacks for either new homes? I know this is a new home. And I guess where I'm going with that is they're at 80 feet and the township is approving it. And it also, they technically are going behind what is already there. So I guess I'll stop there. Yeah.
It would take me a minute to look into it a little bit. I couldn't tell you exactly. None of them ring a bell, at least in the last couple of years.
Okay.
But there could have been some that obviously have been, prior to that.
Thank you, Dan. Dan?
Thank you. Well, I kind of am looking at it a little different. I don't like houses encroaching closer than your neighbors because you're impairing their vision. You guys are stepping up and going back to 80 feet. I was thinking 75 because you had proposed 72. You got to deal with the land you got there, and I don't like to have to dig up a lot of land. I know it's a new home, and I understand Bob's point, but I think usually a landowner will look at it and go, this is the best spot, like you did. I hate to differ from that because I don't think it's, looking at the overhead here, you'd be probably the farthest back on that whole side of the shore. So I tend to go with it because it's 80 feet and we've gone as far as 65 before in certain cases when the land requires it. So I'm okay with it.
Thank you, Dan.
Well, I've got one pulled up right now just to kind of interrupt you quick to answer Dan Moll's question.
Okay.
We've got a house right here. It looks like in 2018 they went through a variance process. They had about a 1,200 square foot home that was 30 feet. So it's not, you can't consider it just because one other person had one, that next person gets it too, right? There's so many factors. Every request is based on that specific property and what happens there. With that said, though, there was a home on a similar size lot that had, right, you can see up here a 1,200 square foot home approximately. That was now a new home at, about 2,000, 2,100, and that's 75 feet from the ordinary high water line of the lake. So that was a few properties to the south. I can't speak, I don't know the property enough if there was issues with septic, right? There could have been many other factors that we're not looking at, but purely based on the setback, there has been one at least in the last, let's say, 5-6 years.
Thank you. Thank you, Aaron.
Russ?
I think the setback should be 100 feet. That way they don't have to come in and do any more permitting again.
Thank you, Russ. Just to kind of talk a little bit about what was said, I think, I'd strongly encourage the 100-foot because there is something to be said about having to come back for variances in the future. But like I said, I encourage you. I'm looking at that wetland area as a practical difficulty at this point. We start filling in these spots, we start messing with the natural drainage to the area. So my big question is if we did, and that was my original thought from the previous meeting, was to maybe shave that down, fill that, and do that. But I'm beginning to think twice on that because we changed it there. Where's that water going to go, and who's going to be affected by it? And I don't know that question, and I would hate to create a situation where that wetland gets filled and it limits the volume and it ends up going to your neighbor or out in the street or wherever. So not knowing that, I'm looking at that wetland as a practical difficulty altering that. So 80 feet seems reasonable to me, but I can go with the variance request, so.
Just for the record purpose, so it's not an inventoried wetland. It may hold water. It may be, definitely used as drainage in the area. I just want to make sure that's clear that it's not technically an inventoried wetland. So technically, as of right now, I wouldn't necessarily need Soil and Water Conservation District to get involved if you were to alter that little spot.
So noted. Thank you, Aaron. With that said, do I hear a motion?
May I ask one more question? Aaron, so the 500 cubic yards of dirt, is that including the land, dirt on the land? So you're moving 500 around?
We'd consider movement because that would be more than just here's what's needed for the home, right? You're not just bringing in a tiny bit of material, right, or pulling out a little bit of material on the property to set the home in. Right now, you're moving things elsewhere on the property in order to accommodate all this now.
And then being so low back there, your footings would have to be much deeper to get to virgin soil.
I can't speak for what the
Okay.
Minnesota State Building Code is going to
Just
say,
a
but
point.
That would be true.
Yeah. Okay, that's hard enough for me.
Mr. Chair? Yes. I guess I'd like to ask the applicant, what are your thoughts from our discussions up here? I mean, do you want to not disturb the soils? Or is it an option? I mean, I know we're bringing this all, hard to make decisions on the fly per se, but
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I was I was wanting, I a little surprised by the, making a big cut, by that lake, at the crest of that hill. I was a little surprised by that suggestion because it seems like we would try not to, I know it's not a bluff, but I was thinking, try not to disturb that soil as much as possible. That was my thoughts when we looked at the house, when we've been out on the site.
There's 20 steps to the lake right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, so,
So if we,
I mean,
scoop it out.
but
it'd
it,
be-
so I hadn't considered that, I guess, is my
I guess
thought.
that's kind of my question, is, it's your property out there. I mean, is something like that ridiculous? I mean, to do a cut into it, I mean,
Well, Dylan, you can-
Well, the only thing, the one problem with, excuse me, with doing the cut is, there is, nice line of trees, right along the top of that hill. So one thing with doing a cut, to level that would be, I think we would lose trees, right along there. And I know it's already been stated in the previous, I mean, yes, trees can be replanted, but I don't want to be come in and slash it, slash it down. So I guess you kind of hit me, I don't know exactly what to think of that. I don't know, Dylan, if you've got any comments about the practicality of that?
Well, I guess where we landed on this 80 feet wasn't just a magic pick a number. We sort of thought between a little bit of cutting and a little bit of filling, it created the least amount of disturbance for both that little cut on the lakeside. We're gonna have to do a little bit, but I think it's back from, there isn't a bluff, you're right, but where the edge kind of rolls down there, we're back far enough from that where we'd have to cut off that couple of feet up right underneath where the deck is currently. So, I mean, we're moving back substantially from where we were before. I think almost double. And it sets us in there where we're not impeding where he has the maintenance drainage drawn, or maintain drainage, sorry, on there. So we kind of centered it in between those two things. We thought that seemed practical, which is, I think, where we left last time, what you were asking us to prove.
all right, thank you.
Thank you. Do we hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the 80-foot setback of the high water line with some conditions of the site plan noted and the building plan noted. And I don't know if we need any drainage on that, stormwater management on that? Do you think?
It's up to the Board of Adjustment.
Okay, I don't, with it being back down, I don't think they're, okay, I'm fine with just that motion.
All right, thank you. We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it, along with, I guess I'd like to add into the motion that the township approves of this.
So moved for me. Yep, that was
All right,
it for me.
any further discussion?
Let's go off what Dan said. So just, we'll note the site plan Exhibit A, building plans Exhibit B, and then as part of this, you guys were doing a new septic plan, correct?
Oh, we've already put in a new
We already
septic
put in the
system.
septic, sorry. So
Yeah.
the septic's already installed.
Yeah.
And it does accommodate the amount of
Yeah,
bedrooms.
okay.
Okay, so we have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
So noted. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dan and
Just
Dan.
a quick question. So you mentioned going back to the township. You'd like us to do that, or you guys do that? How does that work?
So basically, the township, based off the board's condition, it would be,
I was just making the statement that township
They have
approves
it
of it.
Oh,
I
I'm
just wanted
sorry.
that in the
Okay.
motion that the
Thank you for
township did approve.
clarifying.
That's okay.
Thank you,
right,
thank you
thank
very
you for your
much.
time.
Speak for
Appreciate
us
all
up
of
here
you.
when the township agrees. Yeah. Or for me personally.
all right. Next item on the agenda, we have the James Stubbe request. Could the applicant please state your first and last name?
Jim Stubbe.
All right, so this right here, we have a 0.13 acre property in Victor Township. It's zoned urban rural transition and located on Lake Mary, which is classified as recreational development. The allowed impervious surface coverage for this property is 29.3% based on the home, which is grandfathered in. The current impervious surface coverage is now at 39%. The request is to allow, essentially, to keep 10 by 12, so 120 square feet patio out of the one that's currently there. That would bring the impervious surface coverage down to 32.4%, but still above the 29.3% allowed administratively through our office. A variance is required as the request would be to further exceed the 25% impervious surface maximum. The township approves of the request to reduce the existing patio size as the current property owner purchased the property after the patio was already constructed and was not aware of the violation. It should be noted that if the board does not approve of the request, the patio will need to be removed. And that'll wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything you wish to add to that?
Well, I think he gave a pretty good summary. We purchased this property on October 6th. We weren't aware of all of impervious surface requirements or any of those things since the house was new and had just been built the past year. So when we realized we had this situation on our hands, I'm looking at how do we try and resolve this, and so that's the reason for the variance. I'm looking, to develop a solution and work out something that might be reasonable. So in doing that, shrunk the patio down. The present patio basically goes up to the edge of what's flat, and then from there you start it's not a dramatic slope to the lake, but it is, goes on down. When we met with the township board, they understood the situation as after we described it. So then I went to, one of their thoughts after they approved it was to perhaps look at putting in a rain garden. And in that process, I contacted Natural Shores Technology out of Maple Plain, which I was familiar with and knew that they had done a lot of work around Minnetonka and for City of Eden Prairie and so on. And in discussing with them our situation, his recommendation to me was to put in a buffer zone of native plants. And so, I don't know, do you have that, Aaron? Did you get?
The Board of Adjustment should all have copies of it.
You got these? Okay. So that is what we'd like to include as part of our proposal here to try and find a solution to this. If you gentlemen do not approve the variance, then I'm not sure what our options are. Because we go straight out onto the grass. There's just nothing else there. You can see in the picture. So what we're doing is the patio will be shrunk down and only catches the north door and then half of this middle door, and then the rest of it is. It basically allows enough room for a smaller size patio table and a grill.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. I'll open up to the public. Is there any comments, concerns from the public at all? Seeing none, we'll move the discussion up to here to the board. And Dan, could you get us started?
Yeah. Looking at this and looking at the challenges that we have with already starting out at 29%, in a very small lot, very, very condensed. And I guess I'm questioning how this could happen, that, technically the county or somebody didn't catch it, being it's a newer home. Is there a door accessing that patio? So is there
Yes.
a door that comes right out onto that patio, correct?
There's 3 patio doors on that side of the
Okay.
home.
Those are all patio doors, they're
Yeah.
not just windows.
And to your question of how this happened, my understanding is that the county was unaware of, we closed on this property on October 6th, and my understanding was the county was not aware of it till September 29th.
Yeah, I can maybe give a little quick rundown here, and I don't know, maybe to make it clear in my overview. So the house They had an old house there. It was grandfathered in. It was at 29.3%. Part of Minnesota state statute, exact replacement, allows for them to replace it at 29.3%, even though that is above the 25% maximum, so long as they don't expand. So on their plans, they never included a patio. I don't remember how we got a call, a complaint, whatever, looked into it. We're like, well, obviously any bit over what was existing, the house, is going to push them further over the 25%. So realistically, any size patio would have created a violation as part of it. The home itself is not a violation. So the home, we don't issue permits for patios through our office. So that is sometimes where people, add them in and then they, have issues like now.
We do capture all of the rainwater from, all of our impervious surface is basically the roof on this property. And we've got crushed rock for a very small driveway. We're very close to the road. All of our grass is on the lake side of the house. So I know we got that 25% rule. When I look around at neighbors, what I see is almost all of their impervious surface is on the lake side of the house, which is somewhat natural, and all their grass is on the other side of the house. Ours is the reverse of that. So the only water I think we're changing, anything we're adding, is over that 10 by 12 piece. Otherwise, everything else has been addressed on the property.
Thank you.
Aaron, now outside, and we've talked about this before, I'm just refresher, outside of a door, it doesn't affect if you do a 4x4 pad. Technically, if you're walking out, we allow a 4x4 pad.
To an extent, they're still supposed to count towards impervious based on the house was allowed as exact replacement. I do have notes that, potentially it should still be approved if going that route through the board to show location of where potentially a 4x4 pad for safe ingress egress out of the building would go.
I guess where I'm going with that is we're allowed to have a pad, granted it goes against, but you've got to have a pad step outside of your house. And 4x4, they're asking for a 10 by 12. If you take it down to a 10 by 12, we're at 32% yet. Does not make me happy. But looking at the hardship, he purchased it this way. I don't like it that he purchased it, or that the previous, I don't know how to handle it. It's the previous one, And if you make him take it completely away and get rid of all of it, you're walking out onto grass all the time. You're not able to wipe your feet off to get into your house. There's 3 doors out there, so if you want to go technicalities, you can go 3 4x4s. You're at a 10 by 12. So I don't like it. I guess all what the rest of the board has to say.
Thank you, Dan. Dan?
Sure, thanks, Chairman. Have we ever approved of a pervious or permeable stones for patio stones?
It would be up to the Board of Adjustment. Our office, what we state is no matter what level of permeability it has, they've got permeable paver systems, et cetera, we give a 50% credit if it's a walking surface. Parking and driving surfaces do not get that classification, even if they are considered permeable. So once again, we're already over the maximum. So even if you added, 10 square feet of patio that was permeable, you're still adding 5 square feet of what we consider to be impervious, which further exceeds that number. Board of Adjustment has the ability to, approve over that, in this case, 29.3%. There could be conditions that it must remain permeable, and that they would allow for an X amount or what size, but that is, our office would be unable to administratively approve of it.
Okay, but there are pavers out there that fit our criteria of 50% then penetration.
What we would consider to be 50% impervious, obviously, the applicant and myself had that conversation where our office, we would look at it as being less, if it's 100 square feet, we'd look at it as 50 square feet. But in this case, we're in a situation where 1 square foot over is still technically further violating that number. So
I was just curious if you were interested in having a little paver way all the way through to a little pad. If you went all that way, you'd be less than that 10 by 12. Because 50% of the little 3-foot path or 4-foot path to it from your other doors, and change it all to water permeable pavers, I would be okay with something like that.
What I'm not sure of is, and I did look at some impervious services, trying to figure out what else is out there. And that was my question there, and I don't know what is actually considered, because when you start looking, you see so many different options. So and some of them have a square pad, then you've got crushed rock around it. That's what I see most typically when I look at impervious patio. You have, I don't know what they call it, because wasn't my line of work, but there's a plastic grid that goes down, and then the patio paver fits in the center, and then you put crushed rock around it, and then you put another one next to it,
I was just thinking, it's nice to have a little bit of something to step on out of each patio door, so I was,
Well,
if you were to reduce that 10 by 12 to 50%, I was willing to say, yeah, put something over the other doors too, and keep that pad, but make it all permanent.
well, yeah, I'm really
You are.
more focused on having a place to set a patio table and,
Yeah.
and chairs. It's hard to slide on rocks and grass, and that's,
I think you definitely fall under a hardship there, though, not knowing when you bought the place, and I'm just trying to help you remedy, but still you keep something for a walkway by the doors, because otherwise mud splashed in there on your.
well,
doors all the
and
time.
what I'm looking at here is if what we've proposed, we would be able to use 2 of the 3 doors. The third door's over more to, if you will, the living room area, this family room side of the house. That door, I think we can forego that one for
Maybe wood chips or something, keep the mud off.
entry and exit.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Bob?
The thing of it is what gets him in trouble is the size of his lot. If he had a half-acre lot, we wouldn't even be talking about this at all.
Yeah.
So the hardship is the size of his lot. And, he, as much like Board Member Mall says, we don't like being over the numbers, I think this is very practical. And I think he does have a hardship because of the size of his lot. I think his request is modest.
Thank you, Bob. Russ?
I think it's a hardship deal too, so I don't have no questions.
Thank you, Russ. And likewise, I share both Bob's and Dan's views. Really the common sense approach is what can we do? We got this problem. You didn't create it. Your solution that you're proposing is very reasonable, and I can go with the variance request, so.
Mr. Chair, I guess, how does the board feel, looking at the property and the way it is, how does the board feel about a stormwater management plan or buffering or that, or just getting grass in, getting it covered? I mean, I know before some of you people are on the board, we always were pushing rain gardens and all these things, but what do we want to make sure he's just got grass coverage out there? We have to fit with the neighborhood. I personally don't want to be requiring him to put in all native grasses and you can't mow it and all that stuff, and his stuff is 4 feet tall, and everybody on each side of his neighbors is completely manicured and groomed or hard surfaces. I mean, what do we want to see there? Do we want to make sure that it's well sodded, well covered?
I like you bringing up that point. I would just go with grasses, replace the concrete with grass is my opinion. But so I'm okay with grass.
Yeah, grass would be fine with me.
Okay.
My
Well-
only suggestion though, just was asking you.
What I had was thinking, and I had sketched it out on my survey, was putting a 15-foot barrier of the native grasses down along the shoreline. And then the sod, which is what we have now, going up and around the patio.
I think what the board might be mentioning is, well, that is by all means a great option, if you want to do it on your own. It sounds like they might just,
Prefer grass?
well, not
no,
that, but say, we're not going to require you, because not only you, if you sell the property tomorrow, the next person's got to maintain that buffer as well. So, I mean, if you want to put it in, that's, anyone, we encourage anyone along the lakeshore who wants to take protections to go for it, but it sounds like they wouldn't necessarily require that specifically.
Okay.
I'm thinking how it would fit in with the rest of the neighbors too, so, I'm fine, I mean, if you wanted to create on your own, a no-mow strip of 10 feet, that's even better, but, definitely some sort of vegetation. It looks pretty flat, so.
Mr. Chairman, I was just trying to suggest to you that you would actually, I was okay with that size, but if you did that penetrable one, I wouldn't mind you even having a little strip in front of the other door. But I don't know how the rest of the board felt. That's what I was suggesting that, but that would have been on your okay, I would think. But if you guys are okay, if you did something like that, pulled out all the concrete, and put in a water penetrable.
Grass would be fine.
Huh?
Grass would be fine. Green strip.
Yeah, I'm talking about a little different though, just so you have.
Oh, you
something
mean in front of the
that
door?
Yeah. Water
2 feet?
permeable. Yeah, 3 feet even, just a walkway to get over to that, because
Okay.
the water splashing down there will become an issue for
Yeah,
all of your.
yeah, that's
all-time
true.
mud. But then you'd probably have to change that concrete over to water permeable, just to keep it less, it would actually decrease the amount of hard cover too then, so.
I don't have an issue with
I don't
connecting
either.
it. I mean, considering the circumstances, I mean, I'm sure when you, was a disappointment, you bought this house, I'm sure that patio was a huge selling point. And then to find out that this patio that you had planned on was, is now not there.
It's all stamped concrete, and then there was a 1.5-foot border all the way around that
So,
in a different color, so it was 2 colors. It was, yeah.
yeah, with that said, we've never, I mean, since I've been here, we've ever approved a variance to 29% impervious. So this is a really unique circumstances, and so I feel comfortable in.
I was just trying to give them another option, if you guys were okay with that option to add
I'll
that.
put it in motion, see if it.
Okay.
Well, sounds like just based off your guys' discussion, I want to point out a few things, being that we've got a couple things involved. So we have over the impervious amount currently. Our office wants to see then it reduced to whatever you guys are saying it needs to be reduced to, but we'd like to know by a certain date. So those are things to consider. So having an as-built survey done, saying this is our impervious surface, after you've removed some stuff, and it's done by a certain date. Same thing with like that concrete area that's removed. Sounds like they want it converted to grass, maybe by a specific date. That would be something that we would like to see. It makes it easier from an enforcement standpoint in our office if you chose right, you were gonna not remove stuff. So,
No, I'm fine with dates. That's fine.
All right.
Okay. I think I got it. I'll make a motion to approve the drawing of a 10 by 12 with an option of changing that over to water permeable pavers, and then also, if you did that, allowing a 3-foot strip all the way across the house. Otherwise, I approve of what he's asking for, but giving him that option, because it would actually be less hard cover than what we've approved, but you'd have that option.
I know you have a motion, we don't have a second.
Okay.
So do we need a second before we have a discussion?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, for discussions, should we have the motion more, I mean, he can decide whether he wants to do impervious or however he wants to do, but just, he's asking for 10 by 12, which is 120 square feet.
Correct.
So just have the motion more state that we'll allow 120 square feet of coverage, however he wants to configure it. If he wants to put a little walkway across from the other doors, he can, but then reduce the patio down to 11 feet, or.
Yeah, I was trying to say though, the square footage would be different because it'd be water permeable, so it'd only count as, that's 120, it'd only be 60%. So I'm just giving them that little bit, we could say.
But then you're still saying if the county says it's only 60, then he's got another 40 feet that he can go to the other door. So I'm just trying to
hard
say,
cover.
of hard cover,
Okay.
120 feet, I mean, which he is asking for. How he configures it is his choice.
Sure.
If he wants to just forego that third door and just wants a 10 by 12, 10 by 12, if he wants to go impervious, and the county recognizes it as a 50%, and he can put a a 2-foot walk, he can work with the county on it, but just more of the motion, just saying we'll allow a 120 square foot patio or hard surface.
May I withdraw my motion and let him make the motion?
So I've got a question too, though. So you're saying it'd be 120 square feet of total. Right now, it's not being proposed as permeable. It is 120. If they converted it to permeable, they would be able to double the size of that patio. And if you're okay with that, I just want to make sure that's clear in the motion. Yes. 120?
It's still 120.
We consider it to be 120. From a visual standpoint, an appearance, a use standpoint, right, it is different. But from our perspective, I just want to make sure we're clear, so that's in there. All right, perfect.
My motion would be that to approve it with 120 square feet of non-permeable. I mean, so if he does something that's permeable or however, it is 120 square feet of hard surface is what he's allowed.
And I'll second that.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion?
Do you guys want to add a few things regarding, when it has to be completed
And-
by? Is it converted back to grass? That kind of stuff, so.
Yeah, the storm, I don't see a need for stormwater management. But I would like to have it all covered out in front by August 1, have all green covered by August 1.
So move.
And then also a survey too, by chance, Dick. So both the survey and the grass covering, everything done by August 1. Perfect.
Correct.
Can I just clarify real quick? Did you truly withdraw your motion?
I did.
Okay,
He did.
wasn't
I
sure
truly
if it was
withdrew.
serious. Okay.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, his proposal is to get a hard surface, flat, it looks like a concrete piece, 10 by 12 to put a picnic table. It seems like we're kind of trying to design his thing for him. My thought would be just to approve the request as presented, rather than try to design it for him. Unless he wants to come back for a continuance.
Well, I guess my thought of the motion, the way it was, is that's what I'm approving. But, there's different products out there, there's different things. In my mind, we're approving exactly what he's asking for 120 square feet of hard surface. And if he can come back with some new fancy materials and the county recognizes it, then he doesn't have to come back here again for another variance, I guess is what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to go any more over the 32% coverage than we are. I recognize the practical difficulty of purchasing and where he's at. So I guess that's where I'm coming from, or where my motion is at.
Just gives him an option, but we're not designing it. He gets an option. If he wants to just do the 10 by 12, that's covers that.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll run over the whole motion really quick one more time for anyone, public, anything like that. So they would be approving the request to allow the 10 by 12 foot, or at least they're approving the request for 120 square feet of total additional hard cover. So in this case happens to be the patio. Site plan that's presented right now is Exhibit A, and the concrete area that's shown to be removed on here would be removed and planted to grass, and an as-built survey showing that the impervious has been met by August 1st, 2024.
Correct.
And you want a survey?
So the as-built survey, essentially, they would go out and resurvey the property to verify that you've brought it back down to compliance.
Got it.
Super. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
And so for clarification, that stormwater management plan you kind of submitted, it's not required, but if you want to do it, by all means, it's up to you. So you can still do that, that plan's been covered, so. Yep.
He explained it better.
Good, Aaron.
All right, next item on the agenda, we have the John and Laura Weber request. Could the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf please state your first and last name?
Yeah, hi, I'm Laura Weber.
Good morning, I'm John Weber.
All right, so this is a 0.38 acre property in Maple Lake Township. It's zoned urban rural transition and located on Maple Lake, which is classified as general development. The request is to construct a 568 square foot livable area addition, a 146 square foot deck addition, and a 253 square foot front porch addition to the existing home that is 7.7 feet from the west side yard. A variance is required for the proposed additions onto the existing home because the home is 7.7 feet from the west side yard, whereas 15 feet is required. The township approves of the request as presented, and that will wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything wish to add?
Yeah, good morning. We are, really, the variance portion is the smaller yellow square that you can see on the property on the side where it's 7.7 away from the other, the property line. Basically, our wish here is we are making this our permanent home. It is currently a one-bedroom home, and we are looking to make it a little more usable for our family. There are 2 rooms in the lower level that are being used as bedrooms, but they're not egressed or considered actual bedrooms. So we're just expanding it modestly to make it a safe environment for the bedrooms in the basement and the main level usable for us on a day-to-day basis. So we're just doing our best to keep the original structure, but make it more usable. It was originally built in the 40s, so just kind of trying to update it while still using the existing structure as our base. So we just asked for this variance so that we can move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else to add you wish to comment on?
Well said.
Okay, smart man. Thank you. I think with that said, we'll open up to the public. Any comments, concerns from the public? Yes, if you wouldn't mind just stepping aside, and then, sir, if you could come up to the podium and state your name and share us your thoughts.
Well, this is the first I saw it. My name is Darren Morrow. I live straight across the road on north of that property. I didn't know what they were doing. I just got the notice from you guys, so I'm here to see what their plan is. I'm worried about my view, as I sit up above it. If there's a variance already to the left, to the west, I was concerned they were asking for a variance to the east, which the west was there. I knew that when I bought my property. Right now, it looks like they're just adding on, that little yellow square, which the house jets back from that as well. This one,
Good morning. Yeah, and then it is going a little bit closer to this side on that side. We are.
but it's behind the
But it's
garage.
behind
The
the garage.
structure,
Right.
it's gonna be even with the
Okay.
garage, and then the structure is only getting raised about 1 block
Okay.
of, so it won't go taller than the garage.
Yep. Okay. So I'm just here for my concern on my property.
Perfectly understandable.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else have any questions or thoughts? Seeing none, we'll close that up to the public, and we'll bring it up to the board. And Dan, Vic, could you get us started?
Sure, thank you. You're removing that little deck.
Yes.
And you're underneath the current building coverage by 1.3 and under the impervious by 0.2.
Yes, we,
Okay. I guess I was looking at it, I see you're taking 8 more feet close to that 7.7, but I don't think that will affect your neighbors. So I'd like to see what the rest of the members have to say.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Russ, any thoughts?
I have no problems with.
Okay. Thank you, Russ. Bob?
Yeah, your request seems reasonable. You still meet all the building coverage and impervious. It looks like it's planned well. You seem to have kept the neighbors in mind with their viewpoints. I think the only reason you're here is because the original house was too close to the line, so I think I'm okay with their proposal.
Thank you, Bob. Dan?
With everybody else.
Okay. I wish they were all this easy. Yes, I'm in fine. I think my thoughts have been shared by others. So with that said, do I hear a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the request to construct a 568 square foot livable area addition, 146 square foot deck addition, and a 253 square foot front porch addition to the existing home that's 7.7 feet from the west side yard, with building permit, or building plans as subject A.
Thank you, Bob. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second it? All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy.
Ready?
Cheryl, Ann, you guys good? All right. Next item on the agenda, we have the Adam Paint Shop request. Could the applicant state your first and last name?
Adam Paint Job.
All right, I'll give a brief overview of this. So, it's a 2-acre property in Marysville Township. It's zoned general agriculture. The request is to allow a home extended business for auto repair 405 feet from a neighboring residence. Variance is required for the home extended business because 405 feet from the neighboring residence, as 500 feet is the minimum required distance. Township approves the request to open a home auto repair business closer than 500 feet from a neighboring residence. The neighboring residence within 500 feet, which is the one you can see up on the screen to the east, from the proposed home, they had no problems in their support of that request. Another neighbor actually commented as well, saying that they have no problem with the request. So technically, even if the board were to approve of a home extended business within 500 feet from the neighboring residences, approval of the specific home extended business from the planning commission would still be required. So that will wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything you wish to add?
No, I think he said everything. I'm just the first step to trying to go through this.
Thank you, appreciate that. Any comments from the public? Any concerns, questions from anyone? I guess seeing none, we'll take the conversation up here to the board. Bob, could you get it started?
All right. This seems familiar to me because we did one of these, I believe, up in by Coqueto a couple of years back. So tell me about the neighborhood. Is it houses? Is it farms? Is there?
Mostly houses. I mean, fields all around. Actually, the field directly to the south is all natural prairie grass. They don't use it anymore. The neighbors that don't have a problem with it converted it back to natural. The neighbors I've talked to have supported me. I mean, they want to give me business when I get going, if I get going.
Okay. I'm thinking of a incident in my own township where they started operating business without a permit, and I guess that's where that would be for the other board to determine is whether a business should be allowed in there. But if the neighbors are fine with it and it seems like it's open area, you're going to be having vehicles stored on your property. That's a concern, and noise of when you're working on them with air tools and that sort of thing, perhaps. So that's where some of my concern is, where what the neighbors, how close they are, what's in there. Let's see. Look at my notes. Even the 500 minimum distance, I don't know, seems rather close. But that's what the requirement is. You're 405. You're pretty close. But I guess I'll let the rest of the board speak.
Thank you, Bob. Dan?
Just quickly on the screen here, so the, I guess magenta color you want to say, I picked up the 3 closest homes, not obviously including the home the applicant resides in. And there's a 500-foot buffer on there just showing where obviously that would lie. If it was outside of a 500-foot buffer, no variances would be required, whether it's considered to be close or not. That's Planning Commission that would look into that kind of stuff. But so obviously a little bit of a close-up. There is a little wetland to the north, which kind of reduces that area a little bit more. You do have a small area on the property that potentially would avoid the setbacks, you know, and outside of the wetland. And, you know, that's about the rough area, so.
Thank you, Aaron. Dan?
I guess, how, the building that you're gonna have it in, how big is that building?
Right now, it's 30 by 30. I'd like to put another bay in it, so it would actually move west another 20 feet, which wouldn't get too close to another additional neighbor. But right now, I just want to start small and build up.
I sit on the other board of planning and zoning, and if, you know, we can give a variance here and stuff, and then he's got an area that it would fit in that he doesn't need a variance. We have, on the other board, we've been out a couple of times to a property in the county, I guess I'll say, I think it's Buffalo Township, but where it's a country repair place like this, and the neighbors, I believe that neighbor's probably 500 feet or more. And we have a lot of problems with air tools and noise and complaints. It's a problem spot out there. And then also, you've got a small lot here for a lot of automobiles. In today's world, you start working on a vehicle and you can't get parts, you pull it back outside, you park it, and all of a sudden you've got 20 vehicles sitting outside. You know, I know these are some of the things that the planning on a conditional use permit will deal with. But starting out here, giving them a variance, I don't know if it's the right thing to do or not.
Great, thank you, Dan. Dan?
Dan added a few things for me to think about, but when I originally read it, I thought, well, there should be a sound barrier fence would be for your own good, just to put up a little 6-foot fence all along that side. But I guess I seen all the trees and I thought, well, maybe the noise won't be bad. I know that extra cars could be an issue. I still think I'd recommend you to put a fence there, just keep good neighbors, you know, and keep noise down, and then do all work inside would be my only stipulations I'd like to see added to it. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you.
Russ?
I agree there. He should have a fence around that property or limited number of cars that can sit there. Because I know sometimes you move in a car and it doesn't move out again for, you know, 3 weeks, a couple of years. But other than that, I think it would be fine, but the car deal is, you gotta have limited cars.
Yeah, and I'd be fine with the car limit because actually my wife already tells me that. Because all the ones in the picture are mine, but they are going to be going away pretty quick too.
So I'd like to point out too that while the Board of Adjustment does have authority to set conditions that are associated directly with some sort of request, so if they were to approve, they could do those. Just for the board's sake too, keep in mind, they would still have to go through the Planning Commission. So even if, let's say they met the setback, a lot of these things are considerations the Planning Commission would take into their potential approval or not. And I think Dan mentioned a lot of those too, just a few moments ago. So I don't feel like as the Board of Adjustment, if there was gonna be an approval, that you need to set every condition because granted the Planning Commission would be the one that would look at this as well.
So we just put suggestion then, or?
Well, the planning commission will, trust me, will hit all of those things. It's more so a variance being 100 feet too close. You know, I mean, he needs a variance because he's 100 feet too close.
Thank you. Anything else, Russ?
Well, excuse me, if it's that 100 feet, I guess if the neighbors are all right with it. I have no problem with it.
All right, thank you, Russ. Yeah, I think what's before us is a variance request, and I think planning and zoning will address a lot of the concerns. You know, just as a little bit of advice, just remember, it sounds like, reading the responses, you got some really good neighbors. Remember that, don't be tempted to leave junk. And eventually, you know, I'm sure they'll recommend some sort of screening as a precaution, but, yeah, so I can go along with the variance request, so.
I might have missed it. Did we open it up to the public? I don't
yes,
remember.
Yeah, I think you did.
Yes, we
Okay,
did.
no one was
We
gonna comment?
did.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, right, we had some written comment. Wasn't sure if there's any oral comment here today, so.
Got me second guessing myself. With that said, do we hear a motion?
I have just one more question. That's, when you get the cup, that's a review every year too, right? After it goes from them guys, I'll have to give them a certificate.
I don't want to answer questions for the planning commission. I don't really
Okay.
get too involved in that, so I
Okay.
guess I would,
That's just for my own thinking.
Sure.
I'll make a motion to approve, as Exhibit A with the site sketch noted A, and then approve home extended business route and go through planning and zoning.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Right, so noted. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ready, Aaron?
all right, last item on the agenda, we have the Edward Walker request. Could the applicant and anyone speaking on behalf, seeing that there's a few of you, please state your first and last name clearly into the microphone?
Matt Walker.
I'm Ed Walker. This is my wife,
Kathy Walker.
Corey Walker. All right, so currently we have a 49.14 acre property in Rockford Township. It's zoned general agriculture and located on an unnamed agricultural tributary, which is classified as a public stream. In 1998, the Board of Adjustment approved a request which said that what are now PID 215, 100, 182, 401, and PID 215, 100, 182, 100, which on the screen you can see are these two, must be owned in common with one building eligibility. It also created PID 215, 100, 182, 402, which is this one I have pointed out on the screen, as an entitlement division over 10 acres. This specific request is to create a 4.8 acre entitlement division, whereas the remaining 44.3 acre restricted parcel would have 100 feet of road frontage. Variance is required as the proposed remaining restricted parcel would have 100, 104 feet of road frontage, whereas 300 feet is the requirement. The township approves of the request as presented, and that will wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicants have anything to add?
Well, my parents both passed away this last year, and that's why we're dividing that property up. I'm Ed Walker.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize, I didn't. If you could just state your names one by one. Did they?
Ed Walker.
Okay.
Matt Walker.
Kathy Walker.
Corey Walker.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Yeah, we want to take this 4 or 5 acres off this 49 acres. My son Corey wants the swamp. He wants to buy the rest of the land. This green line running back up here, that's my driveway and Corey's driveway. And that's about it. And we're short because of that 300 feet. Because the road frontage, we got like 140 feet or whatever it was. And that's where the problem lies. But Corey wants to buy this additional land, and the only thing separating his land from this land is my driveway, or our driveway. Our shared driveway. You follow me?
And Corey does own all of that along the township road from the driveway up to where that other little strip of PID is. So he already owns
all of that, but be it not for the driveway running through the middle of it, it divided it.
And another reason why we want Corey to have this, because I don't want to have to drive by a junkyard for the rest of my life. Not that I have anything against junkyards, but I don't want them alongside my driveway. And
most of this land is, swamp, it's wetland, it's pretty just natural. It's just, we like to look at it. It's really no advantage to have it attached to the home site, other than an added expense for the person that would buy that outlined in red, the home, house, pole shed, and existing driveway.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Add, before we move it up? Okay.
No.
What I'll do is I'll open it up to the public, and if you just wouldn't mind stepping aside for a moment, and if you could come up and state your name and give us your thoughts or questions.
Good morning. My name is B.J. Bittner, and I looked at the Walker property. It is for sale. And I was assured by the listing agent, Donovan Prescott, that 10 acres would be available. And I'm here just for information today, basically, to see what's going to happen. Because I have animals, I cannot buy the 4.8 or whatever it is. I have to have, by the county, I have to have 10 acres. And so I don't know what my options are, what their options are. If they have it all planned out that Corey would buy the extra land, I don't need any road frontage. I don't need, all I would really like would be what would be around that shed up into those trees. I only have a few animals, but by county regulations, I have to have them back there. This is not about any cars or I'm retired. I don't make much noise. So I'm just wondering what my options would be, because if Corey wants part of it and the swamp would go, in there, really all I need is 10 acres. So I don't know that they even know this. Maybe one of them does, but I don't know what my options would be, if they'd be willing to table it and figure it out, or if they're happy with how they have it, I just walk away.
Aaron, do you want to?
I've got a few things just maybe to make note of. Maybe it might clear everything up, or not, make things a little bit more clear. I guess whatever the real estate agent or listing agent mentioned at 10.0, right? We've gone over this, myself as well as Edward and Kathy, correct? And it was based on the road frontage with the division, there is no way to avoid a variance. Whether you do the smallest division size possible, you need 150 feet of road frontage. That means the remainder, it's still over 5 acres, needs 300 feet. We're working with, I don't know, maybe 400 feet or something like that. I think we're close, we're just not there. So no matter what size division were to come off of this, if approved, would require a variance. I guess after that, really it's the Board of Adjustment to make that determination on whether they can justify one, whether it's really any size, whether it's 1 acre up to 10 or more. I mean, it's going to be kind of on them to look at that. Animal-wise, I did talk to Tracy, our feedlot administrator. She just kind of, had some things to point out regarding, right? I mean, there's some wetland, there's a public water stream there. So those are all things to consider as well. The remaining portion of the land would not have a building entitlement, but it's restricted ag land. Theoretically, you've got restricted ag land. Could have animals on it unless a condition were placed by the board limiting otherwise. And as of right now, there's only one access over the stream, if I'm not mistaken, and that is on the screen right here, accessing the main house. So on the left side over here, what would be on the remaining restricted portion, I don't know. I didn't speak with the DNR on it. I don't know if you guys have or not. I maybe mentioned it to call them to see what would it take to even cross that in the first place to access that back portion, being that it is considered a separately saleable parcel if it were to be restricted. Even though, Corey, you wanted to own it, we've got nothing saying it has to be owned, right? It's got its own road frontage. At that point, it can be separately saleable, so.
Thank you, Aaron.
And I need a house to live in, so. So it kind of has to, some of it has to be enlarged. And so if they're all set with how they want to do it, I'll just back away.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
If you have, step up real quick, we can, with no further comment from the public, we'll take this conversation to the board. And Dan, could you get us started?
Several concerns, because I'm going to, I guess, ask a question. The driveway going to back to your property is probably owned driveway. It's a shared driveway, but it's probably owned by you in the back, correct?
Yep.
Because I was staring at this and I was on Beacon and looking at different things. And I don't know if I was drawing some, and I think would be almost be enough. But if you were to move your driveway where it comes in and angles, you'd keep the same water crossing. But if you moved your driveway to that side, would there be enough to be able to get 300 feet there? I guess is one of the things that I was looking at.
Well, honestly, we had talked about that too.
Okay.
You know, that
Doing that.
that would maybe, you know, relieve some of the heartburn for the footage, because Corey does own all of it. So if the driveway came across the creek and angled up to the township, we can get to that 300 feet on either side of the driveway, I believe, or it maybe look more palatable anyways. And it would still only remain, and I'm not trying to speak for them, but presuming, I'm the brother, I just live down the road. Presuming that they continue to share the driveway, it would, it doesn't really change anything other than the lay of the land there a little bit for where the driveway would come in. So.
I guess where I'm coming from, sitting here, like I said before, I'm on the planning commission also. I'm looking at, I know you have no intentions today of selling it. You're gonna live out long life, be there forever. But I will tell you, sitting up here long enough, things happen and things change. And looking at that, you've got a house that we're gonna technically be splitting off. There's enough room there to build another house. I mean, you've got 40-some acres there. Granted, it's restricted right now. But like I said, I've sit on another board up here, and things get rezoned, things get changed. You're in Rockford Township, correct?
Right.
Things are growing in Rockford Township. You live there, you know that. You know the traffic, you know what's happening in that township. I'm trying not to put us in a bad position, the county or you, in a bad spot. So I kind of would like to meet the 300 feet if possible, so we don't need a variance. I understand what you're trying to do. So I guess that's kind of my thought on it, because I'm looking at that's big enough for a house. You rezone that 40 acres, right now it's restricted. 15 years from now, when you're gone, you're at their point, you need some money for retirement, then you're back in here.
15 years?
Got 15 years?
No, it could be 50, whatever, you know what I'm saying? I guess that's part of when I'm sitting on planning and zoning. We got a plan for the future for the county. What's it gonna look like? How are we gonna protect it? How are we going to preserve it? Just like we're trying to do with these lakes and houses too close and decks too close, and trying to do the best we can. So I'm just looking at a way to avoid a variance, have enough road frontage according to the ordinance.
So if the driveway were to
Shift to the west.
shift to the west as it is, then we wouldn't need a variance. And then how does Ed just quit claim that piece of the road to Corey, and Corey give him a?
Piece to the,
I didn't say it wasn't gonna create more issues. I'm just trying to.
No, I'm just, because we do have a buyer that's trying to get, that wants to be in there, and we did upgrade the septic. We put in a new mound system on the home place, and they're anxious to get in to be able to use the shed and stuff, but because of this, it's like, we've been afraid to say, well, yeah, go ahead and start doing anything, because it's, but if we could get the surveyor out there next week and simply come to you and say, hey, we shifted the driveway, so we got 300 feet on each side of it. I mean, is that?
yeah, that's,
I'm sorry, Aaron, but
No worries.
I opened up a can of worms.
So, and
I don't-
we've
I
gone
don't
over
want-
this as well too, right? Back when that original variance created all of this up here, right? It created, the attachment of this piece to this piece with the driveway, this piece separated off as a division over 10 acres, all that. We'd have to go get an approval via the Board of Adjustment to adjust what's already there. Administratively, we can't just do that because it already had been addressed by the board and looked at and approved as a specific way. Now, I'm not saying the board couldn't change that. It's just it would be up to them. So it would require still, let's call it a variance or an update essentially to what you guys were getting variances for in the past, such as being over 10 acres for this parcel here, this one lacking the road frontage. Potentially, you guys could move this driveway over. We'd want to figure it in. And then what Dan's saying is that we would be able to maintain 300 feet, for the house site division. And if that's the case, we could approve that then administratively, or at least just roll it in as one approval through the Board of Adjustment. The remaining restricted piece would also have the necessary required road frontage of 300 feet. I would suggest, if that's the route you guys are looking at, that we continue it until the next meeting so that we can sit down, we can meet, we can draw this up to see if it's even feasible right now. I don't know where this line's going to come along, along the edge of this here. You guys might want to, let's see here. Yeah, I guess, I don't know. It would be something that we'd like to draw up and present to the board to make sure they all are fully understanding what's going on, as well as it being a possibility. But would require Board of Adjustment action either way.
So if we move that road to the west, that would allow the total 600 and, was that what you had on there, 629?
Yeah, so we would measure, let's say, if you were to take the road, right?
How many feet is the road, is the driveway now wide?
Give me 1 second. I would just think you guys would do something like that with it. Currently probably 33 feet or 66 feet. This isn't perfect, but we could check your survey as well. You guys, if you were to move the road right up to here, so it would connect back in, you would still maintain, access. This would still have access. This would have to get, once again, changed. We might be able to get in. Yeah, it appears to be a possibility to do so. This isn't survey grade accuracy where these lines are based on aerials and everything. If that's the case where you need to put in a whole new access over here, driveway, just to get up to your property, that would be potentially an issue. That's why I don't know. I guess it would be recommendation on our end. I'm not saying the board can't make any decision today, but you have someone out there like a surveyor, go make some proper measurements to see if you guys can even do this. Because you don't want to be rushing into something that's going to cause you another issue after. So you'd rather do it, I think, correctly the first time if that's the route the board wants to go.
Those drawings are what I drew at home. And then the other thing is, I know you have on the aerial, you have X's across those two buildings, so will those be moved? So we're not, 'cause we've also had problems with lot lines going through the middle of buildings, and
Right.
that's not good.
They're
Junk.
junk.
They'll be gone.
They're gonna
Okay.
be gone, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. I seen X's on them, but I want to make sure
Yeah.
it's on the record that those will be removed. So, okay.
What about that larger one too?
What type of setback on the larger one is there? Is there 10, 15
10
feet?
feet, yeah.
15 feet?
It's going to depend on the acreage, right? So at 4.8, we're looking at 10. If you guys go up to 10 acres, now we're looking at 30 feet. So I'm not saying it's not possible, but based off what we're looking at here of already 320 feet, that pushes you over. If we're only working with 600, maybe 620, that may limit you. So
I guess we're okay with this.
Just so we can meet all the setbacks. I guess that's the important part, that, that building
Yeah.
that line is over far enough to meet.
Right.
We'll put the
setback.
line where it's supposed to be.
Okay. I guess that's what I have.
Yeah, thank you. Now, if you do that, then that would move that to 300 feet over there, then you would be in that other building too, to keep it straight. Just so, there's a little bit of issue there, because it would move to the, what's that, east side?
Say that again?
So if you do the 600 and get two driveways in there, now all of a sudden that building, that larger building back there would be in that 300. Yeah, part of that right there. You wouldn't
No,
have-
that building has to remain.
That's a
Yeah,
pole
that's a
barn.
big pole barn.
But that's what I'm saying, for your driveway to work, Now at 300 in a straight line, you wouldn't get it because of that building.
All you need minimum too is a 300 by 300 foot box in order to make that work. So you could potentially alter lines past that, but that's why this is something that should not be decided, in my opinion, at this meeting. It should be addressed. We make sure we can do this, meeting setbacks to an extent, because just by moving this over, right, if you came over with this line, you know, I mean, if we can still get the 300 by 300 foot box in on this side, you know, as well as this side here, I mean, it could be a possibility. But if you were to run this straight up at 300 feet, over to there, yeah, you're inside of a building, and Board of Adjustment should not be making approvals for new lot lines going through a building.
I thought you didn't have to go back that far to.
You wouldn't have to. That's why we would have to draw this up. I mean, if you're presenting something to the board, we would like to make sure you can meet, because they'd have to make an approval to take your driveway down here, right, shift it over, because this was approved by variance back in '98, both this parcel and this driveway, and then make sure you have enough room for the boxes. It looks like it could be a possibility. I just don't want to be here at this meeting trying to figure things out. Board of Adjustment potentially makes an approval, and then you realize you can't do it, and now you're back spending a new fee coming to the Board of Adjustment.
Yeah, I was nowhere near approval myself, but I was just bringing up that other complication. But now that you suggest or finished it for us, that's good. That they could do it by angling over, but I guess I'm done.
All right, so just are you thinking about coming back with a new proposal after?
We didn't want to.
I mean, we still proceed with what we're at, okay. All right, I'll go with Bob.
Yeah, what,
We got, you know, we're kind of screwing up. We got a buyer for the house. I mean, he wants to be in there bad.
Well,
Right.
Ron right here,
Right.
so.
Yeah. And it's all on limbo
Sure.
for you guys.
Okay, I just wanted to get some clarity. So
Yeah.
we're gonna go proceed as the variance is presented, so that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
yeah, I think what Board Member Mall has proposed would be more to my liking. I don't particularly care for that 104 feet when there's a possibility of making it, you know, making it right, you know, correct or to make that 300 by 300 box. So I don't care for the drawing that we have in front of us today.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Russ?
Yeah, I don't think it's quite right either. Should have the 300 foot. So I am not for this here.
Thank you, Russ. I have a little different viewpoint. I do think ultimately Dan's idea is good, but I can go along with the variances requested. You know, if we look at the surrounding area, it's on a dead-end road. So some of the issues that we calls for having a 3 foot for safety and what have you really don't apply in this case. So I don't have a problem with the variances requested, but like I said, I think long-term it might be worth considering, but that's up for you to decide. So we're here to vote for the variance as presented, so do I hear a motion? Oh, wait, just, I'll pause for a second, just so you know, you've heard kind of where everybody's at. So we can do a couple things here. We can go ahead and vote, or we can go back and take what's been said and come back again with a new proposal. Or the third option is you can withdraw. So I just want to give you those options before we go ahead, knowing what you've heard already, so.
Well, planning and zoning tells us not to hire a surveyor until we go through you guys. How are we gonna hire a surveyor to move this road over?
So we don't want you to spend the money up front.
I don't
If this right here was not going to get approved and you hired a surveyor to do this right now, you would have spent money if they would have denied it. We don't want you to do that. If it gets approved, we would say yes. At this point, if what they're going to, you know, tell you we'd like a continuation and maybe see that road moved over, at that point, then there are some actual numbers that could be more serious that need to be met. So that's when I would get someone out there to at least just see if you have enough width to make that work. But that's pretty much up to you. I mean, if you went right now and they voted on it as a no and you paid for a surveyor, you would have spent money on a survey that's not valid.
Well, we have enough width. We can move this road over. It's Corey's land. Corey wants this property to stay in his family. He's got a couple of young kids, and so we can move that road over. We can have 600 feet or whatever you want.
That
Just
road can come angled
The other way.
Yeah.
the other way just as far as it did that way. So the question then, I mean, how does that work, Aaron? Can we, trying to be sensitive to the time issue here, can we approve a variance with a 3 foot and 100 foot, and then they can come in with the surveyed to show that, or do they need to come back for another meeting with an exhibit that shows that?
We could draw or try and draw something up if the surveyor goes out there, quickly take some measurements saying that it's not able to make any of that work based on widths, everything like that. Your approval is invalid, essentially. And if you want to come back to the board, it's a new request and a new fee. So I'm just trying to save you guys potential headache, time, money, to make sure we can draw it out, you know? I mean, at 4.8 acres, right? I mean, if you only went with 300 feet right here, we're looking at going through the building. So obviously that wouldn't work. So we'd have to make some changes. It's gonna take a few minutes to draw this up. It's up to the Board of Adjustment at this point, but.
Well,
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
perhaps a suggestion, you know, I know it messes up the applicant's timeline, but probably it would be easier for me if that parcel to the west, even if it didn't make necessarily the 300 feet, if it was 290, to approve the variance. You know, even if it was like 290 or something like that, by moving the driveway, if you only ended up with 290, that'd be more palatable to me to get a yes vote than the 104. And yet, it would cost them a month of time, that's for sure.
Could I add one more thing to throw in there?
Sure.
The mix? The existing farmhouse, could we give that an access strip of 104 to the creek and then go from there? Or to the waterway? Would that be nothing you guys would be interested in?
could we run this angle, that green line over here, move that back to the east, where you don't have the 300 feet there, and give us the 300 feet?
But then,
Yeah.
as a board, then we're going against our ordinance. Our ordinance is 300 feet.
Yep.
And I think there's an ability here, being they own the land, to be able to get our 300 feet. I mean.
Yeah, that's not a
it's-
problem.
it's-
We can
it's-
go,
Yeah. I
we
mean,
can go to the west and make sure we get 300 feet there.
3-3.
It's just, we're trying to speed this
Well,
process up.
looking at is that Aaron, are you the one drawing?
Yeah.
Looking at the lines that Aaron is drawing, we're out to 316. If we put the,
These are not survey grade accuracy too. That's why I've been trying to
yeah,
point out.
I realize that, but I mean,
Okay.
you've got a little bit of margin of error built in there the way it is, but if the driveway curved even when you came across the creek, if it came out at a little more of an angle even to the west, it doesn't matter because it's still Corey's. You run it over there another 50 feet if you want. You've now created more than enough to play with on either side of it. I mean, so you get the setback for the shed. You still got 300 for the house, 300 for this new parcel, I'll call it the new parcel, and Corey's existing land still has plenty of, if something happens down the road that he would need to put a different access in or something, so.
What I'm trying to do, what I think anyway, Corey said if this doesn't go through, he'll buy the whole place. But that's a big burden. And I don't want to have to put him through that. Because he's gonna buy that land back here, this 40 acres or whatever it is. He's gonna buy that. But if he buys the house, that's a lot of money. And he doesn't need that expense.
And if we can-
And he's had rental property before, and it ain't that much fun, so.
And I guess, Mr.
And by
Chair,
moving,
not what we're trying to create. I'm trying to make it so that when his kids build there, or he comes in and rezones it, whatever, that they've got their 300 square footage, everything matches with our ordinance, and the kids have got a place to build.
So if we had the surveyors come out and survey this 4.8 some acres separate, so it would have its own parcel, and the rest of it with our driveway straightened out to see if we have that allotted 300 feet on each parcel, then
We're gonna
that would
have
be a
300
go.
feet.
There's plenty of.
We got plenty of room here. We can move the
Right.
road
Over
way over.
farther.
Yeah, so we're gonna have 300 feet. It's just,
We just have to move our road, our
Yeah.
end of the driveway over.
Is this, Aaron, good enough for us to vote on, what we see here?
It's up to the Board of
Subject to-
Adjustment. The things, like I said, I would hate it if there wasn't enough room, because now the request is, if there's an approval, it's invalid. And the part about the road, like, yes, you guys, Corey's got the frontage, but if you move it over too far, I don't know what the DNR says, it's a public water stream. If they say too close, we're not adding another access in, there's already an access there. And then now, this person right here, if that was moved over to
we're
get
not
the,
moving the culvert.
It'd
We
be-
use the same culvert.
I get that, but that would be part of this property then. And that's the issue. If that crossing is now in this property, you do not have road frontage back to your guys' property.
It would still be on,
Corey does, you guys would not. You guys would have, your frontage would be crossing over a stream without an actual driveway. So that's what I'm saying, you can't have new easement access. I just don't want to create an issue. It looks like it could be possible based off of Mr. Moll's initial assessment of potentially moving that to get 300 feet. That's
guess
all
I
I can
don't-
say. I'm not saying there's going to be an issue.
I don't understand
just
it.
don't want there.
I don't understand. This road is partially Corey's and mine, the way it is.
Yep,
Easement,
yep.
back and forth. Okay, you said before you can't have, I'd be landlocked if that was Corey's land up front.
What I'm saying is, so Corey's got his road frontage here. I don't really care that he uses that access. The DNR is probably happy he's only got one access there. If this line, can you guys see where I'm pointing at right here? If the frontage said, well, 300 feet, you actually need to have this line over on the other side of this culvert. Based on that's the numbers, right? These lines are not perfect. These are just rough drawings. At that point, now for you to stay on your property entirely, you might have to cross a creek that has no crossing, because the driveway would now potentially be on this 40-acre restricted piece. It might not be the case, and I hope for your sake it isn't. I'm just saying these are things that I guess I would want to know if I was going to make a change like this, that I actually had the ability to do so properly. If it works out as such this way, this might be the best option, as long as there's adequate space.
And the only way we can determine that is to have a survey done.
At this point, the original plan, we would have there's no reason to get a survey. If this is what you guys are saying, you want 300 feet, then yes. If you're along the lines of Mr. Newman's comment of it's closer to 300, it's 290, well, then this is probably sufficient.
And with regard to going across the creek, I know I ran into the issue on my driveway. It was, it'll take too long to explain it all. It was a problem with the township because they had excavated and dug in the natural waterway when they replaced the culvert coming down to my place. So it created a problem, and then the township came to me and said, you need to dredge the creek from your house all the way down to the Crow River, which would have been totally illegal. So I wound up spending quite a bit of time with the state's hydrologist. So, at that time, going across the creek wasn't an issue for them as long as we didn't do any sort of excavation in the waterway. If a culvert needed to be placed, you could place a culvert, cover it, and they were fine with that as long as you didn't go in there and move the water, and that's basically the way it always was. So I think even if that came up down the road, it would probably be, there's probably a workaround for it.
So that's what I was just saying, and I mentioned this when we initially looked into these plans to present to the board, is we don't have jurisdiction below that kind of ordinary high water line of the river. I would hope they would let you cross that, or at least this restricted piece that now doesn't have access over that.
Yeah.
If you look on the screen, right, this is the new parcel, it doesn't have its own access over. Granted, it's in the family, but if it's separately saleable, the next person says, how do I cross it? I don't know what the DNR says. Maybe they say, yeah, no problem, throw in a culvert, throw in a little driveway. Maybe they say, you have to do all these different things. I don't know.
And
These are
it's-
just things that I would want to know. I'd want to talk to the state and I would say, can I do this? Am I good here? Also, I would want to know how much room I have now at this point if they're looking at seeing 300. Once again, if they're looking at 275 or whatever, I would say fairly confidently you guys have enough room for that. But I won't put my money on 300 by 300 for both properties unless I saw the survey.
So would the board be comfortable if, I mean, because we wouldn't know exactly until we had it surveyed. I mean, because, you know, you're drawing, you got margins. So if we, would the board be comfortable, and I don't know how you can do this, if we come back, if we do the survey and we come back, so we know we're within the 275 to 290 range, which I think is probably a reality there. You know, is that something then that could be tentatively approved so that we can move forward with the split and let the people in that are trying to buy the place to get in there and start working on it?
It's up to the Board of Adjustment, so yeah, you'd address
I'm
them.
comfortable with it. I think after this discussion, we've looked at all our options. I mean, we could obviously continue this, but I am comfortable considering I was comfortable with 100 feet. So I don't know, Bob, Russ, or
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
When did the 300 feet deal come into play? Or, I mean, I don't have 300 feet in my driveway.
it's been around a long time.
Has it been?
I'm happy with giving them a 75-foot access strip in there out into the existing house. I
So,
think that gives a new buyer there if they ever do plenty of room.
so I guess if someone wanted to make a motion with less than 300 feet, could entertain that.
I'll make a motion to,
I'm going to step in really quick. So after speaking with council, if we are going to include this, well, in this case, it would be Corey's as well as the Ed and Kathy's property. It would be a $50 renotice fee to get these properties involved in it. Otherwise, they would not have been present for, I don't know where it went. There we go. All right. So basically, because we have the 500-foot notice, all that, so if there were any properties that wouldn't have been as part of this, all that kind of stuff, they would not have received notice. So we have to give proper notice. It's not a new hearing fee. So it's a $50 renotice fee. So that's something that has to be put out. We have to send that, I believe, is it to the paper? Yeah. Paper. Notice is sent to all adjacent properties within 500 feet, and then a $50 renotice fee. So that would be a continuation until the next meeting.
Right. So that's pretty much.
You know, we've talked to all the neighbors, our neighbors, they've all been neighbors of ours for 40 years or more. Yeah,
So,
but I'm just telling you, they don't have a problem with it.
You filled the room. So, but
That's another subject.
but the problem is, I mean, we literally have gotten to the point, and we realized, I think, planning commission, we had this room full of 100 people on an application. They recommended it for findings. I drafted findings. I went through it and went, uh-oh, it never got published. We had to continue the case, republish it, and go through it all over again.
Yeah.
Because that one little thing would result in a reversal if it got to court. So we just need to do it, and we need to dot our i's and cross our t's and do it properly.
And most of the property owners within that 500 feet are us.
I understand that.
I know, I'm just saying.
It's not just the notice, it's also a publication with the paper. So then we notify the general public as well.
so
Which paper?
The Delano Herald Journal.
Okay.
So just to be clear, we'll continue this item to the next meeting. We're not going to vote on the variance that was presented to us today as. So we're gonna reschedule and we'll, hopefully we'll have some more documentation on this and then the posting will all be done and we can vote then.
Yeah.
So do I hear a motion to continue this meeting?
Can I ask one?
Yes.
So,
we get a
so do you
survey?
want us to then get the survey of where the, because I guess
I would recommend you get a survey.
If you
Okay,
get
well, yeah,
that,
I guess what I'm between the lines here, whatever, is that if we come back next time with the survey in place that shows we've pushed it over as far as we can to basically keep Aaron's line straight there, so that we're at the, whatever it winds up being, 275, I'm saying 275 to I'm thinking closer to 300, but 275 to 290, we're gonna be okay.
it sounded like from this board, I know you heard us,
Yeah.
when we were, so.
If you can make 300, do 300, then there's
Yeah.
not variances down the road.
We'll hold
I
you.
mean, an
if
extra
you
10
have-
feet,
yeah,
if it works,
Yeah.
make the 300.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's obviously if we have to do this, we'll push it to the 300.
Yeah.
If we can do that, but
If
if
you
it's.
can't, then we go from there, yeah.
Go angle to the west?
Yeah, would it be all right if, across the creek then, to angle it and come further over? And then, I mean, that we can,
We can make the 300 easy then.
but are you, what you're worried about?
I mean,
I think at this point in time, you're not getting 5 firm denials, why are you in front of us? The Board of Adjustment can't give you a guarantee until they see what's finally presented to them. I think at this point in time, it would be prudent and a good investment of your funds to get a survey and come up with a plan that then they can stamp as Exhibit A and approve it and hopefully get this done.
Okay.
Okay.
So, I mean,
Thank you.
you're not seeing 5, why are
no,
you
I
in front
just-
of me? You know, this isn't a bluff.
No, I just, when we leave here, I wanna make sure that we're doing it the way we need to do it to
We don't
kick the
have to
can
come
down
back.
the road, so.
And also, I'll just let you know, I know you guys have a buyer and you got your buyer here as well, but we can't do a split until property taxes are paid in full, and we haven't even determined what property taxes are on these parcels yet. So that won't be done until end of March, early April at the earliest. So you're waiting through this time period anyhow where the finance department here is determining property taxes anyhow. So you really don't want to do you're in this limbo right now where you really can't do a split without putting down a substantial amount of funds above and beyond what would be the estimate for property taxes. So doing a continuance right now is actually not a bad thing. I know you may feel like you want to buy it right now, next week, but administratively, you're sitting in a good spot to do a continuance.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, council. Do I hear a motion to continue this item?
I'll make a motion to continue it to the March 1 meeting.
Do I hear a second? Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
No, motion carries. Yeah. Motion carries. Thank you.
And then we're automatically on the next, we don't have to do anything as far as hooking up the.
We'll have to do a renotification.
Yeah.
Okay.
Aaron.
Yeah, we'll take care of that one.
When is the next meeting then?
March 1st.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
thank you.
Motion to.
Motion to adjourn? All right. All in favor say aye. We don't have to vote.
Oh, no, no.
No.
Just make a motion, right?
Yeah, we're done.
Well, we do sometimes, and sometimes we don't.